Ah, look, I'm just going to play something here. Actually, I know it's a screen capture, but that's the way it goes. It's going to be interesting.
Pat Price died in 1975, and some people believe it was because of his work with remote viewing.
CIA hired Price away from us, and 4 months after joining the CIA, Price was dead.
And the big question is, was he killed or was it a natural death?
Like in the movies, you want to know, did he jump or was he pushed?
What do you think?
Interesting.
The emergency department people said that there was an individual that came in with him with a briefcase
Yeah,
that
interesting.
showed the attending physician in the emergency room his recent EKGs from Greenbrier, which was the facility that I knew that we'd taken him to get his cardiological workup some months ago, and basically said, look, here's the guy had rampant serious coronary artery disease. He had a heart attack, so even though he died unattended in a hotel room, they decided, they meaning the hospital and the police, to not make it a medical examiner case.
Amazing.
So they didn't do an autopsy.
No
Although that's
autopsy.
not correct. And the man disappeared with the briefcase with the notes.
Yeah.
They never took any records of it. Body was removed and cremated. And then they called his wife.
Oh, goodness.
I know a little more about this story.
That's exactly why I wanted to talk to you.
People who are so valuable are never taken out. They tempt them with amazing circumstantial monies, dwellings, houses to work for them. They will never. This is like killing the goose that lays golden eggs.
I saw Pat shortly before he was killed. He was coming to see us.
Yes.
But before he left, he called several of his friends to say goodbye in an odd way.
So
Well,
in short,
yes.
he predicted his own death.
And
Yeah,
he
true.
purchased a $1 million term life insurance to give to his wife Ann at the airport.
You see, I didn't know that. Interesting.
And
Yeah, it was.
he's changed his trip to visit his son
Yeah.
in Salt Lake.
Maybe he had a psychic feeling that he was about to die. He must have been one of the greatest psychics in the world.
Yes.
He was.
Some Army
He
remote
was.
viewers
I read a
tasked
book about
themselves
it.
on Price's death years later and decided he was still alive and at work. Of course, this was just speculation.
It was entirely unmarked. He deserves better than that.
Of course he did. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Well, today is the 11th of November 2019. It's actually Remembrance Day today for the end of World War One. Anyway, I made a, quite an amateurish, but a screen capture of a story about Pat Price, who was probably the best remote viewer ever known in any detail about. In other words, I'm reading a book right now, and I think it's so important that I should even talk about it, called Remote Viewers, and I'll sort of show you, shall we say, a bit of a close-up on that. And Pat Price is given quite a, amount of coverage in here, and it's by a gentleman called Jim Schnabel. It's an unusual name, Schnabel. I got it sent from overseas. It's quite old. It's actually published back in 1997, which is a long time ago now. And it was really about remote viewing, which was used to be called ESP in the old days, but some absolutely extraordinary cases outlined, absolutely factual. There was endless amounts of strong scientific tests and evidence that to make 100% sure that these people were exactly as they claim to be. And incidentally, well, I've read about close on half the book at the moment. I'm working on the computer, as you can see. Pat Price, very, very interesting, by the way. As was outlined very briefly, he was extraordinary, totally extraordinary in his abilities, and they would just, they tested him endlessly. But what they would do, for example, would be, and this kind of illustrates that you can, with remote viewing, you can also look into the past and you can look into the future. Before anyone scoffs about that, let me tell you it's absolutely a fact. And those amongst you who are Christians, like as I am, would realise that the Bible was full of this sort of thing. In other words, they'd have a prophet, and I can't name all the passages, shall we say, and I don't want to go on and on and on about it, but in other words, chapter and verse, but predicting the birth, teachings, death and resurrection and return of Christ several hundred years before the event, and writing the passages, as it were, in the Torah, which is one of the first books, 4 books of the Old Testament. There's pretty strong evidence that people can see into the future. So we fast forward, let's say, to the closer to the present time. We're talking 1970s or so, and I've covered a little bit of this in another video, but now that I'm reading the book and I'm sort of regarding it like a book review, Pat Price would be shown, for example, a photo of a building. I'm not told where it was, but look, there's a photo of this building. What can you tell me? Well, he'd literally go there in his mind, or somehow or other, it's like astral travel. He'd go, this building is, it's got an interesting features, and he described about, turned out to be a Chinese embassy in one of the African countries. And then he'd say, watch out for this passageway. If you're going to go in there, in other words, you're going to break in and check things out, the CIA we're talking about, watch out for this, because you could lose your footing along here. The lighting is very poor, etc. And of course, the agents who was carrying out the tests said to each other, yeah, we know. But you see another building. It was most interesting. There was another building was being used as an embassy, but when he saw it, he said, there's a lot of people here, sick people, dozens and dozens of beds, and there's a lot of very ill people here, and so forth. And of course, his minders, let's call it, or people testing him out, were incredulous at this. Well, it's funny. That's not what this embassy doesn't have a whole lot of beds in there. Well, they did their research and found out that previously the building had been a girls' school at one point, and it had been a hospital at another occasion. And obviously, Pat Price was looking at it at the time when it was a hospital. So he got the right building, but he got a much earlier time frame. And there was another one where he was rigorously tested, as I was saying. And they say to him, we're going to send somebody out, and so on. I think I might have told some of the stories before, so I won't repeat those. But on one occasion he's saying, he was an extremely good artist, incidentally. He'd draw what he sees, like going to a trance, let's say, but whatever he sees he's drawing very accurately. And he drew a picture of a place that was like a swimming pool, but there was an oval pool, and there was an oblong pool, and then he drew some other things, buildings and a concrete, or it's stark concrete sort of building there, and some couple of towers there, and so on. And anyway, they said, this is not right, you know, there's no towers there. He was right about that they had gone to this swimming pool. In the 1970s, it was just a swimming pool. But back then in the mid-1990s, it was closed as that, and it became a sewage treatment plant. He had described that, by the way, and I thought, no, it's not right. But now it became a sewage treatment plant. And the tanks and everything else that he described earlier, 20 years earlier, let's say, were actually there. Now, we come towards the time when he had been killed. He had some heart troubles. He was a heavy smoker, you know, on 2.5 packs a day, man, and so forth. Well, he did have heart troubles and angina and all the rest of it, but he went to Las Vegas. Now, I've seen a video on this that I reckon it could be a KGB kill, and maybe it was, because they described, as he said, I am sure somebody put something in my cup of coffee. I told somebody he was with, and I'm not feeling well, I'm feeling worse, I'm going to go back to the hotel room, and that's where he went. And apparently he died. Now, the little movie I'm putting on there, it describes what happened as really bizarre. The person with the briefcase and stopping any possibility of an autopsy, which is incredible when you think about it. Was that a CIA person? Was they under direction not to make sure that this person was to be cremated, and then his wife was told about it? Now, apparently he had been estranged, I understand, you know, from his wife and that sort of thing, but then they decided they would tell the wife, and, oh, by the way, your husband died in Las Vegas, and by the way, you know, we had to, you know, whatever, he's gone. Well, anyway, I just thought I'd mention these things because they're of interest. Remote viewing is something that I'm getting greatly interested in, and I'm noticing, as I say, this book I bought it from overseas, but there are many others. You can go online and look up remote viewing, and you'll see a lot of books on it. And may I suggest that those who don't want to send out money and buy it, or go to the shop and buy it, get the title of the book and the author, and go to your local library, and you may be able to get it in on what they call interlibrary loan, here in Australia anyway. And if they don't, they might be able to purchase it in and get it for you. So I'll leave you with it, but I think and hope anyway that people will be interested in the subject and will perhaps like to make a couple of comments. So like be civil and polite, let's say. And it's just one of those subjects that I've taken a lot of interest in, and I thank you for viewing.